This is video 11, a bit more about grammar. In the course of our exploration of communication, we've seen how people infer the meaning of the messages they receive from others. The meaning we attribute to any act of communication is derived not only from the content of the message, but also from our beliefs about what the sender of the message is thinking. Our interpretation of a message is colored by our perception of the situation in which it is sent, our relationship with the person sending it, and our understanding of the cultures and worldviews of the people involved in the communication situation. These, along with our understanding of the language being used, all contribute to our understanding of the messages we receive, and together comprise what we've called the interpretive context. To accomplish his communicative goals, the person sending a message structures it based on what he believes the recipient of the message is thinking. If the sender and the receiver of the message share enough assumptions about the essential parts of the interpretive context, the receiver of the message is likely to infer the meaning that the sender intends. If, however, there are significant differences between their assumptions, communication is likely to fail. We have also explored some of the ways that using words to communicate adds power and precision to the communication process. We saw that using words allows us to reduce the number of possible inferences that other people will need to sort through when interpreting our messages. Words also allow us to introduce ideas that people would be less likely to infer if words were not used. Since words can simultaneously express different kinds of meaning, using them enables us to both evoke concepts and express how we feel about those concepts with a single term. Finally, words make grammar possible, which is what allows us to easily and efficiently express relationships between things and events in space and time. While most words point to things, events, qualities, and ideas in the real or imagined worlds that make up the subject matter of the messages we send, some words instead indicate how those elements relate to one another. In these examples, for instance, in and on indicate different spatial relationships. In English, sentences can contain exactly the same words, but when they are put in different order, the meaning of the resulting sentences is also different. One of the things English does with word order is indicate the different roles that the different participants play in the events and states being described. We can also tweak the words we use to express different things. For example, when we tweak the verb call by adding different suffixes, or none at all, we indicate different relationships in time. Tweaks to the forms of words, the use of special grammatical words, and differences in word order are tools that all languages use to indicate relationships between the things, ideas, qualities, and actions we talk about. The ways these tools are used make up the grammar of a language. Another thing we do with grammar is distinguish between information that we assume others already know and information that is new to them. Let's look at a few examples of how this works. In this pair of sentences, what does the word it refer to? How do you know? It has to refer to trunk, right? Because the trunk is the only thing in the previous sentence that is openable. How about in this pair of sentences? This time the identification is a little less certain, but given the context, it probably refers to the key. So we have it appearing twice in 3 sentences. Each it is ambiguous without the first sentence, and once the first sentence is in place, each it points to a different thing. Here's another pair of sentences. To whom do he and him refer? Does he refer to Ted or to Zeke? Could he and him refer to the same person? Do you think they do? It's pretty clear that he and him refer to Zeke and Ted, but it's not clear which refers to which. Did the person who initiated this message think it would be clear to the person who got it? Does it matter that it's not absolutely clear which pronoun refers to which person? Maybe not. It all depends on the point that the speaker is trying to make. Would formulating the sentence like this clear things up? How about like this? Do the last three sentences all mean the same thing? Why might someone choose to use any one of these rather than the other two? Him, it, and he are, of course, part of a limited set of grammatical words called pronouns. Pronouns function a bit differently than the other grammatical words we've considered so far. We've seen how most words point to things and events outside the message in which they are used, and how grammatical words indicate relationships between the things being pointed at. Pronouns, even though they are grammatical words, point to things outside the message they're in. But we only know what they're pointing at if those things were named in a previous part of the message or elsewhere in the situation. In this example, only when we add this clause to the beginning of the sentence does it become clear that it points back to Key and his points back to Zeke. And by virtue of those identifications, the things they're pointing to outside the message becomes clear. The hybrid nature of the way that pronouns operate make them ideally suited to perform an important communicative function, that of distinguishing information that is being newly introduced from that which had been introduced previously. The ability to do this greatly reduces sources of potential confusion and helps people focus on what is important, all the while reducing the time and energy it takes to communicate. Like many languages, but by no means all, English grammar provides a way to unambiguously distinguish between singular and plural. What this means is that for nouns that refer to countable objects, the noun has one form that indicates that there is only one of those objects, and another form that indicates that there are more than one. So, for example, key and keys in these sentences have different forms, the plural indicated by the presence of s at the end, and the singular indicated by its absence. This feature of a language is called number. In English, this distinction is reinforced by having one verb form when the subject is singular and another when the subject is plural. The grammatical feature of number in English is convenient, easy, and unambiguous, and for the vast majority of countable nouns, it is also required. That is to say, except for a few rare exceptions, nouns are either singular or plural, but not both and not either. This is not the case for every language. In Chinese, for example, a noun is neither singular nor plural, and how it is interpreted is usually determined by context. Grammatical marking for number, then, is obligatory in English, but in many languages it isn't. In English, the vast majority of plurals are indicated by adding an s suffix to the singular form. Like most languages, English seems to use a given grammatical tool for as many uses as possible. For example, the s suffix that indicates a plural number when attached to nouns is identical to the s suffix that indicates present time when attached to verbs. The s suffix is a single grammatical tool, but has different functions in different contexts. Similarly, the preposition on has multiple functions, all of which are discerned in context. In these sentences, it indicates the role that the phone plays, the time of an action, and the key's location in space. Like the s suffix, on is a single grammatical tool that functions differently in different contexts. Which of these phrases sounds like a better description of this old Daimler? A red big German car, a big red German car, or a German big red car? If you're a native speaker of English, a big red German car sounds more natural. That's because in the variety of English we speak, there is a normal order of adjectives in descriptive phrases. Normally, size precedes color, which in turn precedes origin. That's why saying a tiny purple Italian toaster sounds better than saying an Italian purple tiny toaster. There are occasions, however, when it's best to change this order. Consider advising someone to buy a big red German car. If you're not comparing your recommendation to any alternative, you would say, buy a big red German car. But if your point is that your friend should buy a red car instead of a green one, You would change the order of the adjectives to place the quality you're comparing before the qualities you are not comparing. Similarly, if the point of contrast is the origin of the car, the adjective describing origin would come first, and the others would follow. In English, then, one way to highlight a contrast is to change the word order of the phrase. Earlier we saw that word order is also a way English indicates the roles of participants in a message. So we have one mechanism, one tool, that performs multiple functions. We've been comparing grammar to a small set of tools, each of which can be used to do different things in different contexts. It turns out that most of the tools in the grammatical toolkit also have multiple functions. We've just seen that word order is used both to assign roles and highlight contrasts. We've seen that tweaking word forms by adding an S is used to both indicate plurals and to mark verbs as present tense, and that the grammatical word on can indicate relationships in time and space, as well as assign roles to participants. So we see that grammatical tools have different functions in different contexts in a way that is similar to how nouns and verbs have different meanings in different contexts. And as this feature of nouns and verbs makes it possible for us to get by with a vastly smaller vocabulary than would otherwise be the case, the multifunctionality of our grammatical toolkit means that we don't need an enormous array of tools to perform all of our grammatical tasks, but can get by with a much smaller toolkit. Up next, Video 12, Pattern, Prosody, and Redundancy.